Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to talk about Kislev. You see, Kislev is in a very bad place at the moment. Not only do they lack a lot of units, but they get shafted left, right and center because, well, there's just too many enemies surrounding them and it's a major issue for Kislev overall. Now, Kislev as a faction is super cool. I must say that they were probably one of my most anticipated factions for Warhammer 3 as, well, we never really had a full official army for them, did we, on the tabletop? So seeing them was just awesome. But again, it can't be denied that they need some help in Warhammer 3. The problem is that they were a base game race, so until they get some DLC, things are going to be quite problematic for them. You can see this anytime you play. Even if you don't play as Kislev, you'll notice that they'll struggle very, very early. But before we jump into some possible things that could be added, we need to talk about one massive issue that needs to be fixed ASAP. So one main mechanic with Kislev at the moment is the whole thing with supporters. You have to race against the other legendary lord. If you're playing as Catherine, then you'll be racing against Constantine. And right now the AI gets too many cheats and there's way too many things that are currently bugged for you. One thing is that you'll only get supporters when you take over Kislevite settlements, which kind of makes sense. But the problem is that right now with Immortal Empires, and I'm assuming it's going to stay the same for like a patch or two, is that the diplomacy system is kind of bugged up, right? So as you start taking over, say, for example, the Southern Oblast, then you'll start having issues with Azag, with the vampires, and so on. So you'll want to actually go take them out. The problem is that taking those areas will not give you supporters. We need supporters from pretty much anything that we get it from. The mechanic should work with every settlement, not just the Kislevite ones, as yeah, like I said, the cheats are just absolutely horrendous, and if you're getting into loads of fights, you can't justify taking your army away from those areas and losing your settlements because of the AI just attacking you. It's just a minor complaint, but it really does kind of screw with your campaign if you can't actually focus on getting the Kislevite settlements because everyone else is attacking you. I've heard reports of this working and not working sometimes, which is absolutely bizarre. I've seen it happen to me. I just want to put this out in the open there because it's kind of frustrating and there's more important matters that Kislev kind of needs to be tended to, so these bugs need to be squished as soon as possible. Anyways, let's go to the matter at hand. So Kislev is suffering from enemies at all sides, which leads to a very hectic campaign, this much we're aware. A big problem is the fact that expansion is kind of annoying, as if you're playing as one of the two main legendary lords, you're already kind of cramped in a very small country. You lack a lot of tools, which is kind of odd, and really all the Kislevite lords are together, which is frustrating to say the least. Everything is just way too squished up and feels almost claustrophobic as everything else starts just trying to attack you. It's kind of frustrating. So obviously what we do need in the future is a legendary lord for Kislev, but is far away from Kislev. I mean, even Boris doesn't really count here because he's still very, very close and he'll get there within, what, 3 turns if you just decide to leave your settlement and just go down south. The great thing about how everything's working for the Immortal Empires now is that a legendary lord could literally be anywhere, and if we're looking for a lore-friendly position, I mean, why not just put one down in the Border Prince territories, as the Border Princes themselves will not become their own race. Even if the Dogs of War do become playable, they're not going to be a unique thing, as this is a territory which people kind of escape their original lands for, build up their own sub-kingdoms there. This is something that we now know in lore thanks to Warhammer the Old World from an update from about a year ago, more or less. Plus, that would provide a completely different start, as you won't be dealing with chaos, and more chaos, but rather Skaven, orcs, dwarfs, you know, a little bit of stuff like that, and it keeps you in the Badlands. Or if you want to go up north, you can, and just deal with the Empire, the vampire counts, and then make your way up to Kislev proper. It very much depends, but I think that just adds a bit of difference. The issue right now is we don't know what characters are currently still in canon or not, because, you know, Games Workshop have changed things around, but we do know of one character, which would be Baba Yaga, who has been renamed to Mother Ostankia. This is a hag-style character, which would have a variety of buffs and debuffs, maybe a new lore of magic, but I kind of see it more in the sense of a kind of like a warrior priest, just kind of weird in a debuffer type of form. The thing is, we do know about the hags in general when it comes to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but things might change in the future. Everything that we're going to discuss is a weird possibility, but this could be a character that could easily be anywhere else in the world, even though that most that we do know from the current canon is that she is in Kislev a lot of the time in the outskirts. So yeah, put her down there in the Border Prince territories, kind of like forming her own kingdom, taking the Ungauls down there, as right now we have a lot of Gospodars in the lore, in the actual army, but we don't have a lot of Ungaul stuff, which is another key factor of the Kislevite population. Again, as far as we're still aware. Anyways, so yeah, she'd be a debuffer type of character, probably with some very powerful heals too. So yeah, I mean, it's something different, and it would be new types of stuff to explore, which I think is going to be quite useful. I don't know if the lore of hags would be turned into a unique lore of magic, mostly because Kislev already has 2. I don't know if they want to just like give 3 unique lores of magic to one faction, but either way, you know, big character. She'd have the chicken house mount, which I think is a lot of what people want, mainly because, you know, chicken houses are cool. It would definitely be very, very different to the current 3 legendary lords that we have for Kislev, which yeah, they're all very much the same. So if we get a new lord option, it could either be a hag lord, so, you know, a spellcaster lord just to have the lords of magic there, or, well, you know, this new buff, depending on how it gets implemented, and I think that would work out quite well. But if they don't want to add in too much magic focus, which kind of also makes sense, it's very possible to have like an Ungol chieftain instead, a character that will focus on maybe some range combat, some skirmish combat, boosting up your warriors just to have a different style of combat, because right now it's all mostly focused on gun line and a cavalry charge, so it would be nice to just have a different type of thing with a different character. The issue is that Kislev is missing a lot in terms of heroes and lord options, so it's a bit of a weird thing. Same thing when you look towards the heroes. Right now we're missing a melee option. We have a melee option, I guess, with the Patriarchs, but I mean a heavily armored character that can do some damage, or, you know, a support character that boosts up your troops, but not in the same sense of like the Patriarchs. So we're missing that. It would be cool if we had something like that, or a hag hero to use the lore of hags, or spells of hag, or depending on, again, how the hags get introduced. But yeah, you can see that there's already a bunch of stuff lacking there. Either or works. I guess if it's Mother or Styanka, then it's going to have to be the lord and the hero option for the hags. But I think a melee option would be kind of cool, just to have a bit of support there, especially as you need something to do some damage if you're mostly going to use a spellcaster lord. So now we're going to move on to the roster, and as you can see already, the Kislevite roster is relatively small, again, base game race, and their roster is pretty good considering the fact that all their units are pretty much hybrids. Well, most of them are hybrids, so they've got some versatility. The only problem is that yeah, it's kind of small, and we know that there's an army book. We just don't know exactly what's going to be part of that, because Games Workshop like to take their sweet-ass time with Warhammer the Old World. However, we are missing feral bear units, which I know people are sick of bears. Yes, I am too. But a bear unit exists for Dryka and Rakarth, and it's a bit strange that the faction that heavily focuses around bears won't be using their sacred animal as a shock unit. You know, it's just a bit bizarre, especially since you already have one big giant ice bear. Why not have a heavy shock bear unit just by itself? They'll be cheaper and probably not used as much, but it's just nice to have the option considering that the unit does exist. For anything that's totally new, well, again, no army book, so we just have to kind of look at all the lore. We do know that great stags were a thing, and I don't know if they would act as a unit. I mean, maybe you could have them in a group, like a really fast-moving shock cavalry without the cavalry, or they could have riders too. Maybe the Ungauls, being more of a traditionalist people, might use them instead of horses, kind of more primal, more in tune with nature. And lastly, for a reskin unit, we'd have the Snowhawks, because we already have loads and loads of different birds, great eagles and stuff. It just kind of makes sense because they're part of the lore too. And right now, Kislev is lacking a flying unit, which would be nice to have a really fast-moving flying unit, whether as a group of birds or just having a single entity monster. And I do apologize if there's a lot of cuts in this video. I have a neighbor who started drilling without telling anyone. But speed is definitely something that is needed more for Kislev, because right now you're staying still a lot, especially with how many archers you have, how many range units you have. It's all very compact. A higher tier type of skirmishing cav would be great, kind of like the Marauder Horse Masters for the Chaos factions. Would be really, really good for a Ungol focused DLC. Have two variants, obviously, some range and some melee, still being hybrid, so still keeping true to the theme, but just being able for Kislev. And I think that would kind of work, just to have a little bit more flavor and variety, because you do have a lot of skirmishing stuff, and yes, you do have a lot of cavalry too, but that kind of fits with the whole Kislevite lore. Hell, if we're going to go for an Ungol theme, maybe instead of having them on horses, they could actually be on stags, which might actually be kind of cool. There could be a few different Crossar variants or Ungol variants of units, but I don't know exactly what could be done here, because the roster feels good in general with humans, but could do a little bit more, maybe a few anti-infantry units, some additional hand weapon variants and stuff, but that's pretty much it. Obviously, a big unit has to be implemented, and I think the chicken house itself should be a unit, where it would be a mount option for Baba Yaga, or Mother Styankia, or whatever you want to call her at this point, and then also be a single entity monster. So that way you've got something that kind of acts like a mortis engine, like a corpse cart, you know. It's got buffs and debuffs depending on what you have, so you could easily have like two different variants, because we already have a big staple with the big ice bear anyway. But what we do need is something to move around and just cause buffs as a general basis. The Patriarch does that, but I'm talking about just constantly through an aura of effect. But I think that would be a great way to just give them a little bit more flavor, give them some extra troops, and obviously a new start position would be very helpful, considering that not everyone wants to do the same thing over and over, and having both of them together is just annoying. Kislev is way too small, it's way too packed in. Obviously this doesn't like solve a lot of Kislev's problems, and I'm imagining that they'll get more DLC as time progresses, because it just kind of makes sense. But let me know what you guys think about this pack idea, I guess, and yeah, we'll start a bit of a discussion. Apologies for the delay in video coming out today. It's going to be like this for a few days, I think, mostly because of the issue with my neighbor. But yeah, see you soon, guys.